Most people blame motivation, but that is not where the real problem begins. You know what you should do, but you still delay. You make a plan, start with good intention, then drift back to the same old habits and call it weakness. After enough repetition, you stop questioning the pattern and start questioning yourself. But the real problem is not that you were born without discipline. The real problem is that your brain is built to prefer what is easy, fast, and familiar, and most people are trying to build serious habits inside a life that keeps rewarding the wrong behavior. That is why you keep fighting yourself and losing. In this video, we are going to break that pattern down clearly. You will see why motivation fails, why environment matters more than people admit, why small habits survive when big promises collapse, and how discipline becomes stronger when you stop treating it like a personality trait and start treating it like a design problem. This is the shift from self-blame to self-respect. From forcing yourself harder to building a system that makes the right action easier to repeat. Stay with me, because once you see why your system is broken, you can finally stop calling yourself lazy and start rebuilding your life the right way. Chapter 1. Discipline is not something you are born with. Most people do not fail because they are stupid. They do not fail because they do not care. They do not fail because they were born weak. They fail because they believe a lie for too long. The lie is this: discipline is something a few special people naturally have and everyone else does not. That lie poisons everything. It turns every missed workout into proof that you are lazy. It turns every unfinished task into proof that you are broken. It turns every return to old habits into a verdict on your character. And once you believe that, you stop fixing the real problem. You stop changing the structure. You stop redesigning the pattern. You stop looking at the system. You attack yourself instead. That is why this book must begin here. You do not need another lecture telling you to want success more. You do not need another speech telling you to push harder and be stronger. You need a better definition. You need the truth. Discipline is not a gift. It is not a trait handed out at birth. It is not a badge reserved for a small group of naturally powerful people. Discipline is a result. It is what shows up on the outside when your life has been set up the right way on the inside and around you. It is the visible effect of repeated structure. It is what happens when the right action becomes easier to begin, easier to repeat, and harder to escape. That matters because the wrong definition creates the wrong battle. If you think discipline is a personality trait, every struggle becomes personal. Every failure becomes identity. Every setback becomes shame. You do not ask, what made this action hard to repeat? You ask, what is wrong with me? That question traps people for years. They read more. They promise more. They wait for a new Monday, a new month, a new burst of motivation. They get excited. They start strong. Then they miss a daybreak. A streak, get tired, get distracted, and collapse into the same old conclusion. I knew it. I am just not that kind of person. But that conclusion is not wisdom. It is surrender built on bad thinking. Look carefully at the people you call disciplined. What do you usually see? You see consistency. You see follow-through. You see routines that look stable. But you do not always see the hidden layer underneath. You do not see how their mornings are set up. You do not see what has been removed from their space. You do not see what they made obvious, what they made easy, what they made automatic, and what they made difficult to avoid. You see the result and call it character. But often it is structure. Often it is design. Often it is repetition protected by a better setup. This is why comparing your chaos to someone else's consistency can destroy your confidence. You are judging yourself at the level of visible behavior while ignoring the invisible system that produced it. That is unfair. Worse, it is useless. Shame does not build reliable habits. Guilt does not create good systems. Self-attack does not remove friction. You cannot hate yourself into consistency. You cannot insult yourself into structure. You cannot build a strong life by repeating a weak story. So stop saying discipline belongs to other people. Stop talking as if some people are born ready while others are born delayed. Stop acting like your struggle is evidence that you are defective. Your struggle is evidence that you have been trying to win the wrong way. That is different. And that difference changes everything. Because if discipline were only a gift, you would be stuck. If discipline were only talent, there would be nothing to build. If discipline were only personality, failure would be final. But if discipline is a product of design, repetition, and environment, then you can work on it. You can shape it. You can strengthen it. You can make it more likely even on days when you do not feel inspired. That is where real hope begins. Not in fantasy, not in hype, in design, in truth, in the understanding that your life changes when your method changes. Think about how many times you have tried to transform yourself with intensity alone. You made a big plan. You gave yourself a hard standard. You tried to act like a different person overnight. For a few days, maybe a week, you felt powerful. Then real life showed up. Fatigue showed up. Stress showed up. Distraction showed up. And the version of you built only on force started to crack. Then you blamed your will. But maybe your will was never the main issue. Maybe the problem was that you tried to build a lasting life on temporary energy. Maybe the problem was that you expected one emotional high to carry a structure that had never been designed. That is not strength. That is gambling. And most people lose that bet again and again. You need something stronger than mood. You need something more reliable than excitement. You need a way of living where doing the right thing costs less debate. That is what disciplined people really have. Not perfect feelings, not superhuman drive. A way of living that reduces the daily argument. A way of living that makes the right action less fragile. A way of living that does not require a heroic decision every single time. So read this carefully. You are not behind because you do not have enough pain. You are not failing because you do not hate your weak side enough. You are failing when you try to solve a design problem with self-judgment. That is why this chapter matters. Before you build anything, you must drop the wrong label. You are not someone waiting to be born stronger. You are someone who must learn to build better. That is a harder truth than talent, but it is a more useful truth, and useful truth is what changes lives. Do not leave this chapter saying, I hope I can become disciplined one day. Leave it saying, I will stop worshiping willpower and start building a life that supports the person I want to become. That is the shift. That is the line in the sand. Discipline is not something you are born with. It is something your life teaches, your system supports, and your repeated actions strengthen. Stop worshiping the myth. Start building the structure. Chapter 2. Your brain wants easy, fast, and familiar. Now that you know discipline is not a gift you need to face the next truth. Your brain is not built to chase your highest future by default. It is built to protect energy. It is built to avoid unnecessary effort. It is built to move toward what feels safe, quick, and familiar. That does not make you weak. It makes you human. But if you do not understand this, you will keep turning biology into self-hatred. You will keep calling yourself lazy when your brain is doing exactly what it has been trained to do. Your brain loves what is easy. It loves what is immediate. It loves what it already knows. It does not naturally wake up asking, what would most benefit my long-term future? It asks, what costs less right now? It asks, what feels better in this moment? It asks, what can I do with the least friction? That is why deep work loses to scrolling. That is why study loses to entertainment. That is why the alarm clock becomes a negotiation instead of a command. You may say you want growth, but your brain often wants relief first, and relief usually wins when the system is weak. This is where many people live in quiet frustration. They know the right thing. They want the right thing. They may even value the right thing. But in the moment of action, they choose what is easier. Then they feel ashamed. Then they promise to be better tomorrow. Then tomorrow comes with the same brain, the same cues, the same temptations, and the same setup. So the same result appears again. This is not a mystery. It is a pattern, and patterns must be understood before they can be changed. Think about how often the wrong choice feels almost automatic. You open your laptop to work, but before real work begins, you quickly check something. 1 click becomes 10. 10 minutes becomes 40. The mind that planned to focus is now feeding on speed, novelty, and easy reward. Or the alarm rings in the morning. You know getting up would serve your goals, but your brain starts bargaining at once. Just 10 more minutes, just 1 more scroll, just today. That voice sounds personal, but it is not a deep truth about your character. It is a fast response from a brain trained to prefer comfort now over benefit later. That preference is powerful because immediate reward speaks louder than distant reward. The gym may give you strength in 6 months. Sleep gives you comfort in 6 seconds. Deep study may improve your life next year. Short videos give you stimulation right now. Writing may build your future. Avoiding the page protects you from discomfort in this moment. So if you keep asking your brain to reject immediate reward for distant payoff with no support, no structure, and no redesign, you are forcing a conflict you will lose often. Not because your dream is weak, because your system is weak. This is the war many people do not realize they are fighting. One part of you wants growth. One part of you wants ease. One part of you wants a better future. One part of you wants less friction right now. One part of you wants to become stronger. One part of you wants to stay with the familiar because the familiar feels safe even when it keeps you small. If you do not see this clearly, you will keep misreading the battle. You will think you need more pressure, more guilt, more emotional speeches. But pressure fades, guilt burns out, hype disappears, fatigue wins, and when fatigue wins, the brain returns to autopilot. That matters because autopilot does not choose your ideals. Autopilot chooses the easiest available path. So stop being shocked when effort alone fails. Stop acting surprised when motivation fades. Motivation was never built to carry everything. Motivation is unstable. It rises, it drops, it gets crushed by bad sleep, stress, boredom, disappointment, and routine. If your entire plan depends on feeling ready, then your plan is fragile from the start. You do not need to hate your brain for this. You need to understand it. Your brain is not evil, it is efficient. It is trying to save energy. It is trying to repeat what feels known. It is trying to avoid what feels heavy, uncertain, or unrewarding in the short term. Once you understand that your next move changes, You stop building your life as if clear intention is enough. You stop giving yourself goals with no support. You stop demanding perfect behavior from a mind standing in front of easier options all day. You stop saying, "Why can't I just be stronger?" and start asking, "Why is the wrong thing easier to do than the right thing in my current setup?" That question is power. That question moves you from shame to strategy. Because if your brain chooses what is easy, fast, and familiar, your life must be designed with that truth in mind. The right behavior must become easier to see, easier to start, and easier to repeat. The wrong behavior must stop being the path of least resistance. This is not cheating. This is intelligence. This is what mature self-discipline looks like. Not pretending you are above human wiring. Not trying to become a machine. Not expecting the desire for comfort to disappear. Real discipline begins when you stop demanding that your brain naturally love difficulty and start building a life where the better choice stops feeling like a daily act of war. That is the shift. You are not losing because you are weak. You are losing when you ask a brain built for ease to fall in love with friction without changing anything around it. That is why trying harder is not the first answer. Understanding is the first answer. Then design, then repetition, then consistency. Your future will not be built by the version of you that occasionally feels unstoppable. It will be built by the version of you that understands the mind, respects the pattern, and stops fighting the battle in a foolish way. You do not need a different brain. You need a different method, and once you accept that, everything becomes more honest, more practical, more possible. Your brain wants easy, fast, and familiar. Good. Learn from that. Build around that. Then use that truth to stop drifting and start winning. Chapter 3. Motivation fails. Environment wins. Most people still trust motivation far more than it deserves. They keep waiting for the perfect feeling, the clean burst of energy, the right Monday, the right mood, the right season of life. They think lasting change begins when they finally feel ready. That belief costs them years. Motivation is real, but it is unstable. It rises fast. It falls faster. It gets crushed by stress, boredom, bad sleep, disappointment, and ordinary life. If your habit only happens when you feel inspired, then your habit is already weak. If your plan only works on good days, then your plan does not deserve your trust. You do not need a method that shines when you feel strong. You need a method that still works when life feels heavy. That is why this chapter matters. You must stop treating motivation like the engine of discipline. It is not. At best, it is a spark. Sparks are useful. Sparks are not structures. Sparks can start a fire. They cannot hold up a building. Environment does what motivation cannot. Environment keeps speaking after emotion goes quiet. Environment decides what is visible, what is close, what is easy, what is tempting, and what gets repeated without much thought. In other words, environment often decides your next action before your willpower even enters the room. That is hard for people to accept because they want to believe they are purely driven by choice. But look at your own life honestly. What do you do more often, the thing you value most or the thing that is easiest to reach? What wins more often, the long-term goal or the shortest path to comfort? Most of the time, behavior follows setup. The obvious thing gets done. The close thing gets chosen. The easy thing gets repeated. The hidden thing gets forgotten. The difficult thing gets delayed. That is not a moral failure. It is a pattern. And patterns must be designed if you want different results. Think about what happens when your phone is next to you, notifications on endless novelty, one tap away. You may say you want focus, but your environment is handing your brain a faster reward every few minutes. Or think about wanting to read more while your book is buried in a drawer and your screen is always in your hand. You say you value learning. Your environment is voting for distraction. Or think about wanting to work out in the morning while your clothes are still packed away. Your shoes are hard to find, and your first easy option is staying warm in bed. You call it a discipline problem, but often it is a design problem. The wrong behavior keeps winning because the wrong behavior has been made convenient. This is not theory. You can see it in simple choices. In one cafeteria, researchers changed almost nothing about the people. They changed placement. Water was made easier to see and easier to reach than soda. That small shift changed behavior. More people chose water not because they became purer, wiser, or more motivated in that moment, but because the environment changed the path of least resistance. That is the lesson. Human behavior is often less loyal to intention than it is to arrangement. What is visible gains power. What is reachable gains power. What asks for fewer steps gains power. This is the part many people miss. They keep trying to become stronger while leaving the battlefield unchanged. They ask for more self-control instead of fewer traps. They demand more effort instead of better setup. They keep placing themselves in environments built for drift, then act shocked when they drift. That is not seriousness. That is self-sabotage with good intentions. You must learn to think like an architect, not just a fighter. Fighters rely on force. Architects change the structure. Fighters try to win in the moment. Architects shape the moment before it arrives. That is how disciplined people protect themselves. They do not always have more motivation. They often have a better environment. They make good behavior more visible. They place tools where action becomes natural. They remove cues that trigger distraction. They stop worshiping self-control and start respecting design. This is what real maturity looks like. Not saying I should be able to resist anything, but saying I will stop making the wrong choice so easy to repeat. That shift changes everything. Because once you accept that environment drives behavior, your standards become practical. You stop giving yourself vague instructions like, be more disciplined, work harder, focus better. You start asking sharper questions. What in this room is pulling me away from the person I want to become? What in this routine is making the wrong thing easier than the right thing? What can I move, remove, prepare, open, hide, block, or arrange so that the better action becomes the path of least resistance? Those questions build a real life. The old questions only build guilt, and guilt is weak architecture. Look at how small changes can alter behavior. Put a water bottle in front of you and you drink more without debate. Leave a book on your pillow and reading becomes more likely. Keep your study materials already open on the desk and the brain meets less friction when the work session begins. Leave your workout clothes ready the night before and the morning loses one more excuse. Hide junk food, turn off notifications, move the phone out of reach, use blocking tools, clean the workspace, prepare the next action before you stop the current one. None of this sounds dramatic. Good. Real change is often less dramatic than people want, but it is more reliable, and reliability is what you need. The goal is not to become someone who wins by heroic effort every day. The goal is to become someone whose daily environment quietly supports better behavior. That is how you stop living in inner civil war. That is how you reduce the number of decisions that must be won by force. That is how discipline stops feeling mystical and starts becoming mechanical. You are not trying to become perfect. You are trying to become prepared. That is a better target because preparation makes consistency more likely. Motivation cannot promise that. Environment can, so stop waiting to feel more driven. Stop asking emotion to carry what structure should carry. Stop building your future on temporary fire. Build it on visible cues, reduced friction, better placement, cleaner triggers, and a space that helps the right version of you show up. Motivation fails because it fades. Environment wins because it stays. The strongest person in a weak environment will still lose many unnecessary battles. The ordinary person in a smart environment can start to look disciplined very quickly. Learn from that. Do not just try harder, design better. Chapter 4. Make good habits easier than bad ones. Once you accept that environment shapes behavior, the next step becomes clear. Good intentions are not enough. You must redesign daily life so the right action becomes easier to reach, easier to see, and easier to begin than the action that keeps pulling you backward. That is the real battle. Not whether you care, not whether you have goals, not whether you can deliver one strong speech to yourself on a Sunday night. The battle is whether your environment gives the right behavior an advantage. Because whatever has the advantage gets repeated, and whatever gets repeated becomes your life. This is where many people stay stuck for years. They know exactly what they should do. They want to read, train, study, write, sleep, earlier, work with focus, eat better, and stop wasting time. But their setup keeps voting the other way. The book is hidden, the desk is cluttered, the phone is always near, the distractions are visible, the tools for the right habit are unprepared, the wrong habit is one tap away. Then people blame themselves when the easier path wins again. Stop doing that. If you want better behavior, your first responsibility is not to become harsher. It is to redesign access. It is to redesign placement. It is to redesign friction. It is to redesign the path your brain keeps taking. Friction is anything that makes an action harder to begin or easier to avoid. Distance is friction. Clutter is friction. Hidden tools are friction. Too many steps are friction. Poor placement is friction. Unclear entry points are friction. And friction matters because the brain does not honor noble intention just because you have it. The brain notices what is near, what is ready, what is visible, and what asks for less effort. So start there. Do not ask first. How do I become more disciplined? Ask what in my environment is making the right behavior inconvenient. Then fix that. If you want to read at night, stop storing the book like it is unimportant. Put it where your hand lands. Put it on the pillow. Put it on the nightstand. Make it the next visible object in the sequence of your evening. If you want to write in the morning, do not let the work begin from chaos. Leave the document open. Leave the notes where your eyes will meet them. Clear the desk before you sleep. When morning comes, the work should feel available, not buried. If you want to train early, your clothes should not be hidden in a drawer behind 6 small delays. They should be ready, shoes visible, bottle filled, mat out, timer or playlist prepared. The point is not to impress yourself with intensity. The point is to shorten the distance between cue and action. That is what disciplined design does. It closes the gap. It reduces the number of steps between intention and movement. But reducing friction for good habits is only half the work. You must also increase friction for bad ones. This is where many people stay careless. They say they want to stop scrolling, but the phone sleeps beside them. They say they want to stop snacking, but junk food sits at eye level. They say they want deep work, but every distracting app tab and alert stays within immediate reach. That is not commitment. That is poor architecture. So make bad habits less convenient. Add steps, add distance, add inconvenience, log out. Delete the shortcut. Move the app off the first screen. Turn off autoplay. Put the charger outside the bedroom. Put the phone in another room during work. Hide the snack. Do not keep the trigger in plain sight and then act surprised when it fires. Set traps for your own laziness. Do it on purpose. Build your space in a way that helps your better self and slows down your weaker patterns. That is not weakness. That is wisdom. Imagine a simple morning. In one version, the phone is next to the bed. The alarm goes off. Notifications are waiting. Workout clothes are still folded in a drawer. Shoes are somewhere out of sight. The first obvious option is comfort. The first visible cue is distraction. The first easy movement is delay. Of course, the morning drifts. Now change the architecture. Put the phone away from the bed. Use an alarm that makes you stand up. Place workout clothes next to where your feet land. Put the shoes by the door. Have water ready. Have the first movement already decided. Now the environment is no longer neutral. It is pushing. It is guiding. It is giving the right behavior an edge before your sleepy brain starts negotiating. That is how design changes behavior. Not by making you a different species, by changing what is nearest, clearest, and easiest to access. The same principle works everywhere. Healthy food goes where it can be seen and grabbed first. Work materials stay visible and prepared. Entertainment moves farther away from the point of effort. The desk becomes clean enough for action. The room stops offering 10 invitations to drift. Every object begins casting a vote. Every placement becomes a suggestion. Every arrangement starts helping one identity or another. So take your environment seriously. Look at your room. Look at your desk. Look at your kitchen. Look at your phone. Look at your car. Look at the sequence of your morning and the sequence of your night. Ask one hard question. Is this setup helping the person I say I want to become? Or is it helping the version of me that wants relief with no cost? That question matters. Environment is not background. Environment is instruction. It teaches your brain what usually happens next. It teaches your hands what is easiest to reach. It teaches your attention what deserves first contact. So stop leaving that instruction to chance. Build it, rearrange it, remove what weakens you, place what strengthens you. Make good habits obvious, close, available, and prepared. Make bad habits hidden, distant, interrupted, and inconvenient. You do not need to redesign your whole life tonight. You just need to stop pretending placement does not matter. Pick one room, pick one surface, pick one routine, pick one bad habit to make harder. Pick one good habit to make easier. Then repeat. That is how real discipline starts taking shape. Not through speeches, through structure. Not through self-attack, through engineering. Discipline does not begin when you force yourself harder. It begins with how you arrange your room, your phone, your desk, and your morning. Make the good habits easier than the bad ones. Then let design do what motivation never could. Chapter 5. Build new habits on top of old ones. Most people try to build a new habit in empty space. That is why they fail so often. They pick a new action, give it a big promise, and then throw it into a day that already has its own rhythm, its own defaults, and its own invisible loops. Then they wonder why the habit never sticks. The answer is simple. The brain does not love what is new. It trusts what is familiar. It repeats what already has a place. So if you keep trying to force a new behavior into your life as if it can float on intention alone, You will keep wasting energy at the exact point where discipline is most fragile. You do not need to create every habit from nothing. You need to attach the right behavior to something your brain is already doing without debate. That is where habit stacking becomes powerful. Not because it is trendy, not because it sounds clever, because it works with the structure your brain already trusts. Your brain already runs on loops: cue, routine, reward. You do not need a lecture to see this. You are already living inside these loops every day. You brush your teeth when you wake up. You check your phone when you sit on the couch. You make coffee when you walk into the kitchen. You lock the door before leaving the house. These actions do not require a speech. They do not need a burst of courage. They happen because they already belong somewhere. They already have a trigger. They already have a rhythm. They already live inside your day. That is the advantage. And disciplined people know how to use that advantage. They do not always invent new routines from zero. They often build on top of routines that already exist. That is the point of habit stacking. After an old habit, place a new one. After something automatic, insert something intentional. After a behavior that already happens, connect the behavior you want to make more consistent. The formula is simple. After I do this, I will do that. After I brush my teeth, I will meditate for 2 minutes. After I make my coffee, I will write 1 paragraph. After I sit at my desk, I will open the file I need and read the first line. After I lock the front door, I will repeat the focus line for the day. This matters because the old habit gives the new one a home. You are no longer asking your brain to create a starting point from scratch. You are borrowing a starting point that already exists. That reduces confusion, that reduces friction, that reduces the chance that the habit gets forgotten, delayed, or debated to death. You stop saying, "I should do this sometime today." You start saying, "This happens right after that." That shift sounds small. It is not. It is structural. A vague habit dies in vague time. A stacked habit has a place to land. That is why this method works so well. It steals the advantage of the familiar. The cue is already rooted. The loop is already alive. You are not trying to build a road through empty land. You are adding one more track to a road your brain already drives every day. That is smart. That is practical. That is how the right behavior starts to feel less foreign. But do not use this method carelessly. Many people hear habit stacking and think any action can be attached anywhere. Wrong. A good stack has standards. The new habit must be short. It must be clear. It must be specific. And it must happen immediately after the old habit, with no gap wide enough for doubt to walk in. That last part matters more than people think. Gaps kill stacks. If you say, "After breakfast, I will journal later," you already lost the structure. Later is where good intentions go to die. You need the move to be immediate. After breakfast, I write 1 line. After closing the laptop from lunch, I review 1 page of notes. After I put on my workout shoes, I do the first set. No open space, no vague delay, no chance for the mind to start bargaining. This is how you get in front of resistance. Look at the difference between weak stacking and strong stacking. Weak stacking says, "I want to read more, so I will try to read in the evening." That is soft. That is loose. That is forgettable. Strong stacking says, "After I put my phone on the charger tonight, I will read 1 page before I lie down." Now the habit has a trigger. It has a time. It has a shape. It has less room to disappear. Or take work sessions. Weak stacking says, "I need to focus more during the day." Strong stacking says, "After I sit at my desk each morning, I will open the document and work for 2 minutes before checking anything else. That is not dramatic. Good. Discipline is not built by drama. It is built by placement. Or take training. Weak stacking says I should exercise after work. Strong stacking says, after I change out of my work clothes, I will do 10 squats before I sit down. That is how you stop letting a good intention float away. You lock it to something real. You anchor it to a living part of the day. This method also teaches you something deeper about change. Success does not always come from doing more. It often comes from deciding where the action belongs. A habit with no cue depends on memory and mood. A habit with the right cue begins to depend on pattern. And pattern is stronger than motivation. Pattern stays when emotion leaves. Pattern shows up on ordinary days. Pattern does not need applause. It only needs repetition. That is the kind of power you are trying to build. Not intensity without structure. Structure that creates consistency. But stay sharp here. Do not stack too much too soon. One of the easiest ways to ruin this method is to turn one small stack into a whole performance. After brushing my teeth, I will meditate, journal, stretch, read, plan my week, and visualize success. No, that is not a stack. That is a fantasy routine waiting to collapse. Keep it tight. Keep it light. Keep it real. One cue, one action, one clear next move. Let the stack become stable before you grow it. This is not about impressing yourself on day one. It is about creating a chain your life can actually hold. Start where your day already has reliable rhythm. Morning bathroom routine, coffee routine, sitting at the desk, returning home, shutting down work, getting into bed. These are powerful anchors because they already happen. The more stable the old habit, the better the anchor for the new one. So stop trying to build new habits in empty air. Stop asking a tired mind to invent fresh discipline from nothing every day. Use what already exists. Use the loops already living inside your life. Use what is familiar to carry what is valuable. Build the new action on top of the old one until the right move starts happening with less resistance and less debate. That is how discipline starts, becoming less of a battle and more of a pattern. Do not try to grow a habit in empty space. Plant it inside a rhythm that already lives in your day. Chapter 6. Start small before your mind talks you out of it. Most people think they fail at habits because they cannot stay consistent. That is only half the truth. Many do not fail in the middle. They fail at the gate. They die in the first moment. They lose before the action even begins. Not because the goal is wrong, not because the dream is weak, because the starting line is too heavy. The demand is too big. The friction is too high. And the mind gets enough time to argue. That is where good intentions get murdered. Right before the first move, right before the body enters motion, right before action has a chance to create momentum, you need to understand something simple and brutal. Starting is often harder than continuing. Once you begin, inertia can help you. Once you are reading, the next page is easier than page 1. Once you are writing, the next sentence is easier than opening a blank document. Once you are training, the next set is easier than putting on the shoes. Motion changes the fight. But you do not get that advantage if your standard at the starting line is too large. This is the mistake people make every day. They do not say, I will study for 5 minutes. They say, I will study for 2 hours. They do not say, I will read 1 page. They say, I will read 30 pages. They do not say, I will do 1 set. They say, I will complete a full workout. Then the brain sees the weight of the task, feels the discomfort in advance, and begins to negotiate. Maybe later, maybe after one more break, maybe when I feel more ready, maybe tomorrow. That is how procrastination gets in, not because you never cared, because you made the first step too expensive. So change the standard. Shrink the entry point. Make the first action so small that your excuses start sounding ridiculous. 1 page, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 paragraph, 1 set. 5 push-ups. Open the file. Put on the shoes. Sit at the desk. Review 1 note. The goal of the first move is not to finish everything. The goal is to enter the behavior before your mind talks you out of it. That is the real win, because once the action begins, momentum can begin too. And momentum does more for consistency than motivation ever will. Motivation is emotional. Momentum is mechanical. Motivation waits for a feeling. Momentum grows from movement. One is unstable. The other becomes stronger as you keep going. That is why small starts are not weak. They are strategic. They protect the most fragile part of the habit, the point right before beginning. They keep the action alive on days when energy is low, focus is poor, and mood is missing. And those days matter more than people admit. Anyone can do the full version on a strong day. The real test is whether you still have a way in on a bad day. Can you still read 1 page when you are tired? Can you still write for 2 minutes when you feel uninspired? Can you still do 1 set when you do not feel like training? Can you still open the material when your attention is scattered? That is the standard. Not perfection. Entry. Because entry keeps the identity alive. Entry keeps the habit from dying. Entry tells your brain we still do this here. This is who we are becoming. People often resist small starts because pride gets in the way. They think 1 page is too little, 1 set is too little, 2 minutes is too little, but 0 is what destroys them, not 1 page. 0 is what breaks trust. 0 is what teaches the brain that this habit is optional. 0 is what turns 1 missed action into a disappearing standard. Small is not the enemy. Inconsistency is the enemy. Delay is the enemy. Overloading the starting point is the enemy. Stop trying to feel powerful at the beginning. Try to be repeatable. That is what wins. Think about how many habits would survive if you made the opening version smaller. Reading would happen more. Writing would happen more. Studying would happen more. Training would happen more. Why? Because the mind would face less threat at the starting line. Less friction, less drama. Less room for laziness to dress up as logic. This is also why the first action must be clear. Not work on the project, that is vague. Not get productive, that is weak. Not be disciplined tonight, that is egoless. Clear means visible. Read 1 page of this book. Write 2 lines in this document. Review 5 flashcards. Do 10 bodyweight squats. Put the phone in the other room and sit down for 2 minutes. When the action is clear, the brain has less space to wander. When the action is small, the brain has less reason to resist. That combination is powerful. Small and clear. Immediate and real. This is how you beat the moment where most people lose. You do not wait to feel ready. You move before the debate grows teeth. You begin before doubt builds a speech. You act before laziness starts pretending it is wisdom. That is what disciplined living looks like in real life. Not giant declarations, not perfect routines every day, fast entry into the right behavior, again and again. You are not trying to prove how much you can do in one burst. You are trying to become the kind of person who can keep showing up. That means the first step must respect reality. Some days you will have the energy to go far beyond the small start. Good. Let that happen. But never make the bigger version the price of entry. The price of entry must stay low enough to survive low-energy days. That is how a habit becomes durable. That is how consistency becomes possible. That is how the right action starts happening before hesitation can shut it down. Start smaller than your ego likes. Start sooner than your doubt wants. Start before your mind talks you out of it. Then, let momentum carry what motivation never could. Chapter 7. You are not lazy. Your system is broken. One of the most damaging words people use on themselves is lazy. They say it fast. They say it with certainty. They say it after another delayed task, another unfinished plan, another wasted night, another broken promise. Then they stamp that word on their identity as if it explains everything. It does not. In most cases, it explains almost nothing. It only blinds you. It turns a design problem into a character verdict. It turns a fixable pattern into a personal flaw. It turns a repeated symptom into a permanent label. And once that label settles in, it poisons the way you see every struggle. You do not ask what made the task hard to begin. You do not ask why your brain kept choosing something easier. You do not ask what in your environment, your routine, your setup, or your starting standard was stacked against you. You just say, I am lazy. Then you attack yourself instead of the structure. That is why so many people stay stuck. They are not only losing the battle, they are misreading the battle. Procrastination is not usually proof that you are broken. It is usually evidence that something about the behavior is badly designed. The task may be too vague, too big, too boring, too far from any reward, too full of friction, too disconnected from any clear starting cue, too easy to avoid, too easy to replace with something more immediate, more stimulating, and more familiar. That is not your identity speaking. That is your current system producing a predictable result. Think about the difference between two actions. One asks you to sit down, clear your head open. Difficult material focus for an hour, tolerate confusion, delay reward, and stay with effort. The other asks you to tap a screen and receive instant novelty, instant stimulation, instant escape. One demands energy first and offers reward later. The other gives reward now and asks almost nothing. Which one will a tired brain choose in a badly designed system? The answer is obvious, yet people keep acting shocked when procrastination wins. Then they make it worse by turning the result into a moral accusation. That accusation is expensive. Shame does not create clarity. Shame does not reduce friction. Shame does not make the work easier to start. Shame does not shorten the gap between cue and action. It only adds emotional weight to a task that already felt heavy. Then, the next time you face that task, you are not only facing the work, you are also facing the memory of failure, the sting of self-judgment, and the fear of proving yourself weak again. So the task gets even heavier. The delay gets even easier. The label gets even stronger. And the loop keeps feeding itself. That is how people build a prison out of a false diagnosis. Look at a simple example. A student says they need to study tonight, but the desk is messy, the television is on, the phone is within reach, the material is buried at the bottom of a bag. The task is defined as study for 1 hour. Nothing is prepared. Nothing is visible. Nothing is inviting. The starting line is heavy before the first minute even begins, so the student checks the phone first. Then one short distraction becomes a longer one. Then guilt arrives. Then the night feels ruined. Then the student says, "I am so lazy." No, lazy is the wrong word. The better description is this: the desired behavior was hidden heavy and unrewarding at the point of entry, while the competing behavior was visible, immediate, and easy. The system was broken. The outcome followed the system. This matters because the wrong diagnosis creates the wrong solution. If you think you are lazy, you will try to become harsher. You will speak to yourself with more contempt. You will try to force longer sessions. You will set bigger rules. You will try to squeeze discipline out of self-disgust. That might create one angry burst. It will not create a reliable life. It usually creates a harder crash, because force does not solve bad design. If the task is too unclear, force does not clarify it. If the reward is too far away, force does not bring it closer. If the friction is too high, force does not remove it. If the environment is still pulling you toward distraction, force only means you must fight the same losing battle again tomorrow. That is not maturity. That is repetition without understanding. You need a better question. Every time you procrastinate, stop asking, "Why am I so weak?" Ask, "What about this behavior is making it hard to begin or easy to avoid? Is it too big? Is it too vague? Is it too far from any felt reward? Is it buried under too much preparation? Is there no visible cue? Is there too much friction? Is there an easier competing behavior?" Sitting right next to it. That set of questions changes everything. Because now you are not treating procrastination like a final sentence on your identity. You are treating it like information. And information can be used. Information can be redesigned. Information can teach you where the structure is failing. This is the shift from self-attack to self-observation. And without that shift, real discipline cannot grow. Discipline is not built by hating the part of you that hesitates. It is built by understanding what hesitation is trying to tell you. If you always delay writing, maybe the first step is too abstract. If you always avoid studying, maybe the sessions are too long and the material is too hidden. If you keep skipping workouts, maybe the routine begins with too much effort before any momentum exists. If you keep drifting online, maybe the distraction is not winning because it is stronger than you, but because it is easier than your current alternative. That is a design truth, not a character flaw. Do not misunderstand this. This is not permission to excuse yourself forever. It is a demand for accuracy. Because responsibility starts with seeing the problem clearly. And the clear problem is not "I am lazy." The clear problem is my current system keeps making the wrong behavior easier than the right one. Good. That is something you can work on. That is something you can redesign. That is something you can stop repeating. But you will never fix it while you keep worshiping the wrong label. So stop calling yourself lazy every time a broken structure produces a broken result. Stop insulting yourself for outcomes your system was almost guaranteed to create. Stop trying to solve procrastination with shame and intensity alone. Use your eyes. Use your brain. Study the pattern. Find the friction. Find the vague point. Find the hidden cue. Find the immediate reward that keeps beating the distant one. Then Start redesigning. Procrastination is not proof that you are hopeless. It is a signal. It is an alarm. It is your behavior telling you that the action has been set up the wrong way. Listen to that signal, then act on it. You are not lazy. Your system is broken. That is the truth that gives you a way forward. Chapter 8. The 4 Rules That Make Discipline Easier. Now you need the clearest tool in the book. Not another slogan. Not another emotional push. A framework. Something you can apply to any habit, any failure point, any repeated struggle. Every habit that survives must pass 4 tests. Is it obvious? Is it attractive? Is it easy? Is it satisfying? These are not decorative ideas. They are design laws. They are diagnostic questions. They are the difference between a behavior that keeps dying and a behavior that starts repeating. When a habit fails, do not rush to accuse yourself. Run the test. Is the cue too hidden? Is the action too cold? Is the entry too heavy? Is the finish too empty? That is how you diagnose behavior. Like an architect instead of judging it like a prosecutor. Start with the first law. Make it obvious. Hidden behaviors do not win. Forgotten behaviors do not become habits. Your brain needs something it can see, something concrete, something placed in front of attention. What stays out of sight usually stays out of action. That is why the book buried in a drawer keeps losing to the phone on the pillow. That is why the water bottle on the desk gets used while the one in the cabinet gets ignored. That is why shoes by the door beat a goal living only in your head. Visibility matters because attention goes where cues live. So, if you want a habit to repeat, make the cue impossible to miss. Open the material before you need it. Put the notebook where you sit. Put the vitamins beside the coffee machine. Put the guitar on a stand, not in a case. Put the language app or the flashcards where they greet you before the distractions do. The first question is simple. Can your eyes find the right behavior fast enough for it to compete? If not, the law is being broken. Second law. Make it attractive. The brain moves more easily toward what feels inviting. That does not mean every useful habit must become thrilling. That is childish thinking. It means the behavior should not feel like emotional punishment before it begins. You want to reduce resistance at the starting line. Pair the reading session with a quiet place you enjoy. Pair study with a clean desk and a drink you like. Create a simple ritual that tells your mind this is the moment to begin. Use a playlist that makes the work feel more approachable. Let the environment communicate calm, not chaos. Attraction matters because anticipated pleasure lowers avoidance. When a habit feels sterile, hostile, or heavy before the first move, the brain pulls away. So ask the second question. Does this habit feel emotionally approachable enough to begin, or have I designed it like a punishment? If the answer is punishment, redesign it. Third law. Make it easy. This is where most people lose. They build the right habit in a form too heavy to survive real life. Too many steps, too much setup, too long, too much friction, too much demanded before momentum can help. Then they wonder why the behavior keeps dying. Easy matters because the brain chooses paths with less resistance. If the good habit is too demanding at the point of entry, the easier wrong habit will keep stealing the moment. So reduce the behavior to a form that can survive ordinary days. Not perfect days. Ordinary days. 5 minutes. 1 page. 1 paragraph. 1 set. 1 review. 1 visible next move. Easy is not weakness. Easy is repeatability. Easy is what gets you past the gate. The third question is blunt. Is this version of the habit light enough to happen on a tired day, or have I built it in a form that only works when I feel exceptional? If it only works when you feel exceptional, it is too heavy. Reduce it. Fourth law, make it satisfying. The brain learns from completion. It learns from progress. It learns from reward. If a habit feels endless, invisible, and flat, it struggles to attach emotionally to the pattern. So give the brain proof that the effort mattered. Mark the calendar. Check the box. Record the session. Track the streak. End the work block with evidence that something was completed. Give yourself a small reward that reinforces the loop. Satisfaction matters because long-term rewards are weak teachers in the present. A stronger body in 6 months is too far away to teach tonight's workout. Better grades later are too far away to teach tonight's study block. A finished book 1 year from now is too far away to teach today's writing session. The brain needs a smaller signal that says this action leads somewhere. So ask the fourth question. When this habit is done, does completion feel real enough for the brain to want to repeat it? If not, add visible reward. Now put all 4 laws together and watch what happens. Take a nightly study habit. Before redesign, the books are buried. The desk is cluttered, the television is on, the phone is within reach. The task is defined as 1 hard hour. There is no clear cue, no inviting setup, no lighter entry point, no tracking. That habit is not just difficult. It is broken across all 4 laws. It is not obvious. It is not attractive. It is not easy. It is not satisfying. So what happens? Delay, avoidance, guilt, then collapse. Now redesign the same habit law by law. Obvious, open the study material and place it on the desk before dinner. Attractive, clean the desk, prepare tea or water. Create a simple opening ritual. Remove visual chaos. Easy, reduce the first block to 5 minutes or 1 small section instead of 1 full hour. Satisfying, mark the session on a tracker log. The completion end with visible proof of progress. Same person, different design. The cue is now visible. The action feels less hostile. The entry point no longer scares the brain. The finish gives closure. That is what a real framework does. It does not tell you to care more. It shows you where the behavior is badly built. Use this on everything. Reading, writing, exercise, deep work, planning, sleep routines, content creation, language learning, skill practice. Every time a habit keeps dying, stop asking whether your personality is the problem. Run the framework. Obvious, attractive, easy, satisfying. Which law is weak? Which law is missing? Which law is being violated by your current setup? Then fix that exact point. This is why this chapter matters so much. It turns discipline from a vague virtue into a usable system. It gives you a repeatable way to diagnose behavior. It teaches you how to rebuild habits with precision instead of guilt. And precision is what serious change requires. So remember the rule: when a habit fails, do not just push harder. Diagnose better. Make it obvious enough to remember, attractive enough to approach, easy enough to start, satisfying enough to repeat. Discipline becomes easier, not when you become harder, but when the behavior becomes clearer, more attractive, lighter to begin, and more satisfying to complete. That is the framework. Use it until design replaces drama. Chapter 9. You do not need to feel like it. There is one more lie that keeps people trapped even after they understand systems, habits, cues, and friction. The lie is this: if I do not feel like doing it, maybe today is not the day. That sentence sounds harmless. It destroys more consistency than most people realize, because once your life starts taking orders from mood, your future becomes unstable. Mood changes by the hour. It changes with sleep stress, weather disappointment, conflict, boredom, hormones, noise, and random events you did not plan for. If your important behavior only happens when your emotions cooperate, then your important behavior is living on borrowed time. You cannot build a disciplined life on such an unstable foundation. You need a deeper principle. You do not need to feel like it every time. You need a structure strong enough to help you act even when you do not. That does not mean this book is asking you to become a machine or worship suffering. No, blind force is not the answer. This book has been building a different path the whole time. Make the cue visible. Make the action easier. Make the start smaller. Make the environment cleaner. Make the behavior more attractive. Make completion feel real. All of that matters because it reduces the amount of inner argument required. It does not mean the argument disappears forever. There will still be days when you do not want to train, read, write, study, or work deeply. That is normal. The question is not whether those days will come. The question is what happens when they do. If your answer is, I wait until I feel different, you lose. If your answer is, I have a structure that still lets me enter the behavior, you stay alive in the game. That is the difference between mood-based living and disciplined living. Mood-based living says, I act when the feeling supports the action. Disciplined living says, I make the action supported enough that the feeling does not get the final vote. Read that again. Feelings matter, but they do not need to rule. You can be tired and still read 1 page. You can be uninspired and still write 2 minutes. You can be resistant and still do 1 set. You can be unfocused and still sit down, open the material, and begin. Those are not fake wins. They are real wins. They matter because they keep the identity alive. They keep the pattern unbroken. They keep the system active on the days most people disappear. Anyone can look disciplined when the day is clean, the mind is sharp, and motivation is high. That is not the real test. The real test is whether your life still contains a door into the right behavior when the day is messy. On the bad day, the flat day, the discouraged day, the day when you would rather avoid everything. That is where structure proves its value. And that is why the work you did in the earlier chapters matters so much. If the cue is obvious, the action is easier to remember. The ritual is attractive, the start is less hostile. If the first step is small, the behavior is less likely to be rejected. If completion feels satisfying, the brain is more willing to repeat it tomorrow. Put those together, and I do not feel like it becomes weaker. Not because you became emotionless, because the system got stronger. This is how mature consistency is built. Not by expecting yourself to love every important task, not by waiting for perfect alignment, not by pretending resistance is gone. Mature consistency is built by reducing the power of resistance, lowering the cost of entry, and making the right behavior available even when the emotional weather is bad. That is the standard you need, not constant inspiration. Reliable access, a path back into the behavior even on your worst days. That changes how you define success. Success is not always doing the full version. Sometimes success is refusing to let the day become 0. Sometimes success is 1 page, 1 paragraph, 1 set, 5 minutes, 1 review, 1 honest start before bed. That may look small from the outside. It is not small. It is proof that your life is no longer being run by momentary desire alone. It is proof that your system is carrying weight. Your emotions could not carry by themselves. It is proof that you are no longer asking, "Do I feel like it enough, but what is the next right move?" My structure still makes possible today. That is a stronger question. It builds a stronger person. Do not confuse this with joyless living. The goal is not to turn life into punishment. The goal is to stop needing perfect emotions in order to do what matters. Some days the work will feel good. Some days it will not. Some days the run will feel energizing. Some days it will feel heavy. Some days the writing will flow. Some days it will fight you. That is life. The disciplined person is not the one who always feels ready. The disciplined person is the one who is no longer shocked when readiness is absent. They planned for that. They built for that. They made the behavior visible, lighter, smaller, and easier to enter because they knew mood would not always show up to help. That is wisdom. That is adulthood. That is self-respect in action. So stop asking mood to approve your future. Stop handing the steering wheel to temporary emotion. Stop telling yourself you need to want it every time. You do not. You need a better structure. You need a system that keeps one foot in the right behavior, even on days when inspiration leaves the room. That is how consistency survives. That is how self-trust returns. That is how discipline stops being a dramatic battle and starts becoming a way of living. You do not need to wait for the feeling. You need to build a life where the right action still has a place when the feeling does not. Chapter 10. Every small action builds a new identity. Most people think they are working for a result. They want the body, the money, the focus, the output, the finished project, the cleaner life, the stronger routine. Nothing is wrong with goals. Goals matter. Goals give direction. Goals give you something to aim at. But goals alone are not enough to hold a life together. Goals tell you where you want to go. They do not decide who you become on the way there. And that is where most people lose. They chase the outcome so hard that they forget the deeper question. Not just, what do I want? Who am I becoming? That question changes everything. Because if you only live for the result, you will get discouraged every time the result feels far away. You will say the work is not paying off fast enough. You will say the body is not changing fast enough. The channel is not growing fast enough. The habit is not improving fast enough. The progress is too small. The reward is too delayed. And once that thought takes over, quitting starts to look reasonable. But identity changes that equation. Identity gives every small action meaning before the big result arrives. Identity says this page matters. This workout matters. This writing session matters. This decision matters. Not because it changed your whole life in one moment, but because it cast a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. That is the deeper layer of discipline. Every action is not just producing an outcome. Every action is reinforcing a self-image. Every repetition teaches your brain something about you. Every time you act, you are answering a question. What kind of person am I? When you read instead of scroll, you cast a vote for the identity of someone who protects attention. When you write for 2 minutes instead of avoiding the page, you cast a vote for the identity of someone who shows up. When you train on a day you do not feel like it, you cast a vote for the identity of someone who does not let mood rule the standard. When you prepare your space, reduce friction, and begin on time, you cast a vote for the identity of someone who takes the future seriously. This is why small actions matter more than people think. They are not small at the level of identity. They are quiet, but they are not weak. They are ordinary, but they are not meaningless. A single action will not transform you overnight, but repeated actions create evidence, and evidence is what identity feeds on. You do not become confident by saying you are confident. You become confident by collecting enough proof that you can trust yourself. You do not become disciplined by calling yourself disciplined. You become disciplined by building a pattern that keeps confirming that identity. That is the real shift. Stop asking only, "What result am I trying to get?" Start asking, "What identity am I voting for today?" This matters because a goal can feel distant, but a vote can happen right now. The goal may take months. The vote happens this morning. The goal may take a year. The vote happens in the next 10 minutes. The goal may still be invisible. The vote is already available. That makes discipline more immediate, more personal, and more stable. Instead of needing a giant breakthrough to feel progress, you can recognize that every right action is already building the person you need to become. Think about someone who wants to become a writer. If they obsess only over the finished book, the big audience, the praise, or the external result, they may feel defeated for a long time. But if they understand identity, the frame changes. Every time they open the document, every time they write one honest paragraph, every time they return to the page after resistance, they are proving something deeper. They are not only producing words, they are becoming a writer through repetition. Or think about someone who wants to become healthier. If they only stare at the mirror, the scale, or the final body, they may lose heart quickly. But if they understand identity, every walk, every workout, every better meal, and every moment of restraint becomes evidence. They are not only burning calories, they are becoming a person who honors the body through action. This is how identity makes consistency stronger. It gives the present moment weight. It gives the small action dignity. It turns repetition into self-definition. But this also means you need to be careful with the opposite pattern. Every delay is also a vote. Every avoidance is also a vote. Every time you tell yourself later and disappear again, you reinforce the identity of someone who cannot be trusted. Every time you break your own word casually, you feed an image of yourself that weakens future action. That does not mean one mistake ruins you. It does not. Identity is not built in one move. It is built in repeated direction. But direction matters. The standard matters. The story you keep reinforcing matters. So do not talk carelessly about yourself. Stop saying I am just not disciplined. Stop saying I never follow through. Stop saying I am the kind of person who always quits. Those sentences are dangerous because they turn old evidence into future permission. They make the wrong identity easier to protect. You need a better script, not fake praise, not empty affirmations. Honest identity language backed by action. I am becoming someone who keeps promises in small ways. I am becoming someone who begins even when it is not perfect. I am becoming someone who protects attention. I am becoming someone who trains the pattern, not just chases the result. That is stronger than hype because it is tied to behavior. Remember the order. Identity shapes habits, and habits reinforce identity. The relationship moves both ways. If you wait to feel like a disciplined person before you act, you will wait too long. Act first. Let the action become evidence. Let the evidence support the identity. Let the identity make the next action easier to believe. That is how real change hardens from the inside. Not through one emotional promise, but through repeated proof. This is why the earlier chapters matter so much. Environment matters because it helps the right action happen. Friction matters because it changes what gets repeated. Habit stacking matters because it gives the action a place to live. The 4 rules matter because they make the habit easier to remember, start, and repeat. Acting without mood matters because it keeps the pattern alive on bad days. All of that was leading here. To identity. To the deepest layer. Because when you understand identity, discipline stops being only a task management problem. It becomes a self-definition process. Every day you are teaching yourself who you are. Every day you are building a record. Every day you are making the next version of yourself more believable or less believable. So take the small actions seriously. Do not worship grand gestures and ignore quiet votes. The life you want will not be built only by rare moments of intensity. It will be built by repeated evidence, by small, honest actions, by daily proof. The disciplined life is not made in one dramatic decision. It is made in hundreds of moments where you cast another vote for the person you said you wanted to become. So stop measuring every action only by whether it changed everything. Measure it by whether it strengthened the right identity. Because every small action builds a new identity. And once identity strengthens, it begins to rebuild your life from the inside out. Chapter 11. Make discipline your new normal. Now, the final truth. Discipline is not supposed to feel like a permanent emergency. It is not supposed to feel like a daily war where you drag yourself through every important action with maximum force forever. If that is how you are living, something is still off, because the deepest goal of this book was never to teach you how to fight yourself harder. It was to teach you how to design a life where the right behavior becomes more natural, more available, and more likely to happen, even when the day is imperfect. That is what real discipline looks like. Not endless tension, not constant inner conflict, not a heroic performance repeated until burnout. Real discipline becomes normal. It becomes the way your life works. It becomes the shape of your days. It becomes what happens when the system is right, the environment is aligned, the starting point is clear, the friction is reduced, the habits are connected, and identity is being reinforced by action. This is the full picture. You are not weak. Your brain prefers easy, fast, and familiar. Motivation rises and falls. Environment drives behavior. Good habits need to be easier than bad ones. New actions grow better when they are stacked onto old patterns. Small starts beat heavy starts. Procrastination is not a character flaw. It is usually a design signal. The 4 rules make behavior easier to repeat. You do not need to feel like it every day, and every small action casts a vote for your identity. That is the journey. Not one trick. A complete shift in how you understand change. And once all of that starts working together, discipline stops looking mystical. It stops looking like a personality trait reserved for special people. It starts looking like what it really is: a side effect of better life architecture. A side effect of living in a structure that supports the future you care about. A side effect of repeating the right actions until they stop feeling like strangers. This is where many people need to correct their expectation. They think the goal is to reach a point where they no longer feel any resistance. That is not realistic. Resistance will still visit. Tired days will still come. Flat moods will still happen. Stress will still show up. Life will still test you. But the difference is that now you know what to do. You do not collapse into shame. You do not panic because motivation is gone. You do not call yourself lazy because a day feels hard. You return to the system. You reduce friction again. You make the cue visible again. You shrink the entry point again. You use the stack again. You protect the environment again. You cast the identity vote again. That is what makes discipline your new normal. Not perfection. Return. Not intensity. Repeatability. Not one giant promise. Daily structure. That is the standard. And it is stronger than drama. Look at how people usually fail. They break one streak and act like the whole story is over. They miss one session and decide they are back at the beginning. They have one weak day and turn it into a weak identity. That is the old way of thinking. This book asks more of you. It asks for steadier thinking. One bad day is not the truth about you. One missed action is not the final pattern. The real question is simpler. What do you return to next? What structure do you rebuild? What friction do you remove? What cue do you restore? What small action do you still take today? That is how discipline becomes normal. By refusing to let one imperfect day rewrite the whole identity. By refusing to abandon the system because the emotional weather changed. By understanding that consistency does not mean never falling off. It means getting back into the behavior before drift becomes a lifestyle again. This is where self-respect becomes visible. Self-respect is not only a feeling, it is a standard. It is the decision to keep arranging your life in a way that helps the right version of you show up. It is the refusal to keep living in systems that betray your goals. It is the refusal to keep speaking to yourself like a hopeless person when the problem is still design repetition and structure. Self-respect says, I stop waiting for a perfect future self to rescue me. I build the conditions now. I vote now. I adjust now. I live now in a way that makes discipline more likely tomorrow. That is the life you are after. Not just a burst of improvement, a new normal, a daily structure you can trust, a life where the right thing has more support than the wrong thing, a life where bad days do not erase your path, a life where small actions keep confirming the kind of person you are becoming. So here is the choice. You can keep living the old story. Keep calling yourself weak. Keep asking mood for permission. Keep relying on motivation that disappears. Keep leaving the wrong behavior close and the right behavior buried. Keep thinking discipline belongs to other people, or you can build differently. You can design the room, the phone, the desk, the schedule, the start point, the stack, the rule, and the identity. You can stop turning every struggle into a character accusation and start turning it into a design question. You can stop trying to become stronger by force alone and start becoming more consistent through structure. That is the better path. That is the adult path. That is the path that lasts. Do not leave this book with more inspiration only. Leave with a decision. Choose one habit to redesign. Choose one friction point to remove. Choose one cue to make obvious. Choose one bad habit to make harder. Choose one identity vote to cast today. Then repeat. That is how discipline becomes real. That is how it stops being a wish and starts becoming a way of life. You do not need to be stronger every single day. You need to live inside a system that makes the right action easier to take, then repeat it until it becomes who you are. Make discipline your new normal. Start today.